From viral internet character to starring in his own horror comedy, Onyx the Fortuitous and the Talisman of Souls, let's welcome the creator of Onyx, director and star Andrew Bowser, and his co-star who plays Farah, Olivia Taylor Dudley. Hello.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on here because I had an opportunity to watch an early screening, but at home. And I was just laughing and having a good time. I really was. There were moments where I was just like, I was looking at it and just like, just, because it just caught me off guard. Some of the dialogue and just the actions of the characters. It was really, really fun.
Well, thank you. I think that was the intent of the movie was to make something that kind of encapsulated how much fun we were having making it, so that hopefully people would have almost as much fun watching it. And I think that joy does come across.
Yeah, it feels like everyone's been really enjoying it, which is really satisfying because it was a blast to make. So you always hope. You always hope for that.
I'm assuming probably long shoots. I mean, it had to be serious, but there were probably points where people were just like, I don't know, so comfortable and having a good time because it comes across in the film.
We lucked out. The first scene that we shot was everyone meeting each other at the dining room table. And I could tell from that scene that everyone was going to get along, both on camera and off. And it doesn't always work that way. An ensemble doesn't always gel, but everyone really did. Everyone really did. And they were having a blast. Olivia and I were both producers on the movie, so we had a little less time to relax in between takes because we were always doing producerial things, but still had a blast.
How being a director and producer and an actress on there, how was that? How did you have the time to, okay, this needs to be done, but okay, let's go and get into the character? Like, was it jump back and forth, or was it just like this, this was done and then you would go over here and do this? I mean, I don't know how you guys could have done that.
Well, I mean, Andrew and I have been working together for a long time. So we've shot a lot of web series and different projects together. So we're really used to working together on the creative side and on the acting side. And Andrew's played Onyx for so long that, I mean, I'm a witness to it. He can go in and out of character like that. Like he needs zero prep time. He can be mid-conversation as Andrew and then turn into Onyx. So I not that it's easy, but you're really good at doing that. And you kind of have to split your brain when you're acting and producing and directing, and you have that many hats on. You have to be able to just like do it all in one moment. And it's always wild when you're done. You're like, I have no idea how I did all that. But it was all pretty constant. Like there was never a day where I was just acting. It was a constant producing, helping you with notes, acting, making sure the schedule's okay, like all that kind of stuff. But we got through it.
I think I think also we're both good at kind of, like, I remember there were days where if I was on camera a lot, Olivia was talking with our producers and maybe keeping some of the producery things away from me until maybe I got to a point where I could calm down and have those conversations. And, specifically, like, we lost a location. And I remember I was kind of one of the last people to hear about it in a good way because I was having to direct or maybe even act that day. And then Olivia was working behind the scenes with the producers to figure out how to solve that problem. So it's nice because on days where, I had a lot of stress as a performer or Olivia had a lot of stress as a performer, we can kind of like run interference for the other person so they can stay in the zone.
Struggling to find his purpose, Onyx the Fortuitous receives an invitation along with others to meet his idol. Was it Bartok the Great?
Yeah, he gave himself that name. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
To raise the spirit of an ancient demon for once in a lifetime ritual. Now that right there, I mean, I was like, okay, I gotta see how this plays out. But first of all, this was a Kickstarter and there were like over 7,000 backers and you raised over, that's what I read, over $600,000 for this.
Yeah. Yeah, and then
Wow.
that didn't make up the entirety of the budget. That was basically that acted as like seed money for then us to attract investors and other financiers. But it got the ball rolling. I mean, we started work on specialty props and specialty wardrobe and the creatures as soon as the Kickstarter wrapped.
Mhm.
Which might have been, from some people's perspective, a little ill-advised because we didn't even have our entire budget together or our producing team together. But it's
But
also,
that
I think,
doing that early is what got us
yeah,
everyone else on board. So
yeah,
Oh.
sometimes you have to
yeah, put the cart
spend a
before the
little.
horse.
Yeah.
Especially having the creatures being made, because then that became work that we could show to investors. Say, look how cool
Mm.
this stuff looks. It's happening. Come on, get on board, etc.
The first time that I ran across who you were, Andrew, is when there was a little short. Was it Little Willie?
Yeah,
That came
little
across
Willie. Yeah,
because I was one of the judges for when that short came up. And I was like, oh,
gotcha.
I know, I know this guy. Did you believe Onyx would get that popular? I mean, have so many fans? Because as I was watching him, his character is so unique, and especially in the film when you first see him from the back, and he's like, you see him at the desk, and
Yeah.
I paused it because I was like, this right here, I mean, there's a reason for this shot here, and you could
Hmm.
really see what kind of person he is before you actually meet him. Like all the little things in there, the toys. I mean, it was like childlike innocence. He doesn't want to let go of his youth.
Yeah.
Type
Yeah.
deal.
I don't think when I started doing the character, I don't think I thought he would be popular enough to sustain over the many years that I've been doing it. Definitely, I didn't think popular enough to. I don't think crowdfunding was even on my radar at the time. But I guess when the first couple of videos went viral, I did have to have the conversation with myself around whether or not he had gone viral because of the format joke and the edit joke, which was that I would splice him into existing newscasts. Or was he also going viral because people liked him and wanted to hear more from him? And I definitely had people in my life that were like, it's just a gimmick. There's nothing there, dude. Move on. But I really, really felt like there was something there, especially by the time I'd done 2 or 3 videos. And now over the years, I realize he really has been a processing agent for me to kind of go back in time and deal with some things that I didn't deal with as a kid. And that's why he's stuck there, because he needs to also move on and heal in certain ways. And we've been kind of helping each other do that for the last 10 years. But I definitely didn't think, I think there's jokes between Olivia and I when we were editing the movie about how, well, this film won't get into Sundance. That was like a running joke. And then that was where we had our premiere. So I definitely didn't think we would get the kind of acknowledgement or validation from such a wonderful festival. And then that really, started the journey of playing a lot of festivals this whole summer. And now it being out, it just, that's all very surreal that it got to that point.
Based on what you're saying, it's like an extension of your personality. Yeah, I was getting that. I was like, no, it felt like this ain't acting. Like,
yeah,
is this really Andrew?
I think I actually, there's a scene in the film, and Olivia and I have talked about this, where there's a flashback and you see a young version of Onyx. And I think directing that little kid made me realize exactly what Onyx is. Trying to get that child to make Onyx's worried expression was difficult, because I don't think that should be any child's default expression. They shouldn't default to anxiety. And I realized that's what Onyx is, though. He is what I did as a child, which is I defaulted to anxiety. And then there was a lot of undiagnosed, I had OCD and didn't know it until I was in my early 30s or late 20s. And that was undiagnosed. So I think Onyx is kind of in that frozen state because I was dealing with those things. It's very much not an artificial thing I put on. It's more that I let something inside come out, for better or for worse.
But you're all very different than Onyx, though. Like, you are a phenomenal actor in the way that you created like a very specific character who does have a lot of your internal traits, but externally you
Yeah.
don't move like Onyx, you don't talk like Onyx, but you've managed to
Yeah.
combine the two, which is why I think it works so well, because you know him so well, but you also get to play with a different person.
I also noticed when you were talking, I don't know if it was intentional, but you made an expression that Onyx does, and I was looking at you.
Yeah.
It's like he appeared.
Oh, it's true.
Yeah,
I know. Even behind the glasses. Yeah. And if I get if I have enough coffee, or if I get too anxious, yeah, he'll just take over. It's a little Jekyll and Hyde.
The casting alone was just so fun because, I remembered a few of them that I've noticed, especially T.C. Carlson. I used to watch Living Single, and he was also, I believe, in Final Destination 2.
Yeah.
I think it was number 2. And I was like, oh, here you go. He's still got it. He's still doing his thing.
Yeah.
Also, she plays Shelly, I believe, and she was on Mad TV. I believe, and I saw her, and I was like, oh, I remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, you had such a great cast. Jeffrey Combs, Barbara Crampton. How was that, getting everyone together with that? Because you had a very good cast.
Well, some of them were people that we had in mind for the roles, but there were some people that, scheduling for an indie is hard. Even if there's people early on that show interest, you might, with any film, but definitely with a small film that's kind of at the mercy of location and, smaller resources, you might have to push the shoot by a number of months. Then you lose the people that you had cast. So it was a dance, I think, leading up to actually being in Massachusetts and shooting. But there's some roles that were always, like Olivia was always going to be Farah. That was written with her in mind. I mean, we even did like test photos for the Kickstarter poster where we like posed as the characters. And then Arden, who plays Shelley, was found by our casting director, Dylan. Rivka, who plays Mac, actually, I found through TikTok, and they did our live read during our Kickstarter. They played Mac during our live read in order to get more funds in during the Kickstarter. TC was on my list of Mr. Dukes because he always, I loved Living Single. I don't even know that I've ever told him that. He might assume that I do love his voice work, but I'm not a gamer. A lot of people know him because he's the voice of Kratos in some of the God of War games. But for me, it was Living Single. And I just knew he'd have the right balance. I wanted Onyx to be surrounded by characters that would kind of help temper his energy. And TC is such like a calming presence, and but still has such comedic timing baked in, but a complete different energy than Onyx. I just felt like that would be a nice balance. And yeah, it was. And Jeffrey actually was suggested by Barbara. We hadn't found a Bartok, and I had been picturing a kind of looming Hammer horror villain, and she suggested Jeffrey, and I said, well, I want to work with Jeffrey. I'm a huge fan, but I almost worried he occupied a similar space to Onyx. We, underdogs. He's villainous, but a lot of times it's because he's been backed into a corner and he's scrappy. Onyx could play, Herbert West in a Reanimator remake easily. But Barbara said, hey, wouldn't that be great? I keep kind of jokingly saying that, and I'm hoping somebody just has to do it. Yeah. You know how many that would be very divisive. Horror fans would be like, this guy, golly. But so she said, well, you haven't seen Jeffrey now, and you haven't seen what he's done and what he can do, especially at his age with his experience. And she was right. I mean, I think he was a perfect fit, and was so down to play with us. Shaved his head, wore that goatee, was out in the cemetery in the rain with us, getting knocked around. So yeah, it was a real blast.
We got really lucky. Our cast came together magically, as they always do in an indie film. And you're like, how did we pull this off? But then everyone showed up there with the characters like really fully formed, and everyone really understood the script and the tone. And it's a hard tone to understand when you step into any of Andrew's worlds. And I think everyone just got it right away. We had no time to rehearse or work with anybody. Yeah. So it was really great that everyone just came in with such a clear, rounded out idea of their character, and they're all so different. So it was just really beautiful to watch it all just like them play off each other from right away, and it all worked.
Yeah, and Melanie, who played Jessminder, had never really played, I guess for lack of a better term, a mean girl. So she talked to me beforehand, and she said, I'm a little nervous. But Olivia and I both saw the audition tape, and we were like, I think she's
You
the
fooled
one.
us.
Yeah, you fooled us. Yeah. And so
Yeah.
even
Me too.
she, yeah, even she, once she got to Massachusetts, was very much like in the pocket. It didn't seem
Yeah.
like anybody was struggling.
Sweetest, nicest person. No
I
mean
know.
girl energy. So when we
I know.
like, oh dang, well, you're a great actress.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the house, like the outside of the house, I was looking at that. I was like, that is so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you find that? You know, the exterior. So I'm assuming the interior was shot somewhere else, or was it the same house?
It's all in that one location.
Wow.
Yeah. We got very
Wow. Very
Yeah.
lucky.
Yeah, it was. I wanted to shoot on the East Coast. I'm originally from the East Coast. I'm from outside of DC, and my family now lives in Maryland and Massachusetts. And it just felt like it was a spooky New England mansion movie. And so my brother-in-law, actually, who still lives in Maryland, just made a Google Doc of all of. I just said, just Google mansions East Coast and start putting this stuff in a doc, and I'll go through and you find a contact email or phone number, and then I'll go through and make the calls. And Ventford Hall was, honestly, it was probably in the top 3 on this doc, and it was my favorite because of how foreboding and still inviting it looked. I mean, it's so sharp spires and red brick, but and it just felt like Bartok would live there. And I called them up, and in the first phone call, I said, "Would you be open to having a film production at your location?" And I said, "Yeah, we're open to it." And every conversation from that point on was pretty much that smooth. And they were talking about collaborators. A lot of times the relationship you have with a location is a bit combative. And this was not. I mean, they were awesome. And the steward was also our COVID officer. You know, they were there. It was just a real collaborative effort between location and production.
How long did it take you to write this script? Now, I remember you would post pictures of some of the animatronics and the practical effects being made and things like that, but it did feel like a long time.
Well, that does come down to having people that weigh in that can kind of get you to solutions faster, which is the same during the edit. And you know, if I had I can get a little distracted with a specific problem, and my thinking can become kind of binary. And then Olivia could say, you know, hey, you're thinking about the wrong thing, or you're looking at it in the wrong way, and we can get to a solution faster. So same with the script. You know, as I was sending pages out of the script, I started it in December, and I think we launched the Kickstarter in February, and it was pretty much the script, but it was way too long. It was about 128 pages. And through the Kickstarter, it was that length. And then when we did the live read, it was that length. But the funny thing is, putting it up on its feet, even just in that context, you could feel where the fat was. And we were like, oh, this can go, this can go, this can go. So after that live read, which was halfway through the Kickstarter, it got pretty close to being the shooting script. And then we'd rewrite based on the location, or there were like fail safes built in. You know, well, if we don't have time, we can just pull this, or this can become voiceover. We kind of knew how things could shift if they needed to. Yeah, but then the script is what we shot, and what we shot is what we edited. You know, there's not a lot of deleted scenes or forgotten storylines. Yeah, it's pretty much
not a lot of improv. I mean, Onyx, you improv as Onyx a little bit, but mostly because like little lines here and there, but that makes sense for Onyx. But no, I mean, Andrew, one of his greatest gifts is he's a really fast writer, and like the fastest I've ever worked with. Like he can spit out a script in 30 days. That's solid. And that is just, we wouldn't have been able to do that without that. And getting to read it through a few times before out loud with cast was like such a savior. Yeah, it was all dialed in. We only had, how long was our shoot? It was what, 22 days, 20 days?
20 in Massachusetts. And then we had a week in LA, another 4 or 5 days in LA, which was for Onyx's house and the fast food place, and a day on a green stage for visual effects.
One other thing that I really did like about this film is the witty dialogue. Now, one of the scenes that just had me tickled a couple of times was when Onyx went behind the wall. And I specifically put a star because those spider webs, like every time, it's like why they're always at mouth level. And I just chuckled really loud because I walked in somewhere and you would think spider webs would be so high.
I know.
And they're just like in your
I know.
Every time. And then when you went through again, it was like, watch out because these might be, spider webs or something fierce. I mean, it's the way you deliver it. Well, that was part of it.
Yeah, it is true. Even on our walkway here at our house, like there's spiders are always right here. Well, that's one of the benefits of having done the character for so long is it's almost like you're playing D&D with him. If you put him in any scenario at this point, I know where he would go and what would happen to him. I think for optimal comedic effect. And so by putting him in this subgenre and having him in a spooky mansion, as soon as you think of Onyx in that situation, you think of a secret passageway, and I automatically think of you'd never see. Well, you might see Indiana Jones get stuck on webs, but you wouldn't necessarily see. Most heroes of most stories deal with like the minutia of the adventure, whereas Onyx is very distracted and consumed by the minutia. So a lot of that is just sitting down and saying, well, what would happen to Onyx in this scenario, and then making myself laugh.
That was one of the most satisfying runners jokes in the movie. Like when I read the script, that made me laugh so hard. And I was really worried that it might not work in the movie. And then we kept doing it. Like it was done it's done so many times in the movie. And I feel like there was a few people on set are like, I don't know if we need another spider-web joke. We need to go in the walls again for that. And we were like, no, we do. Trust me. And it was it all worked out. It was one of those.
Well, especially
it worked. It worked.
Yeah.
Especially when you're fighting for something that also is time consuming, because it was really time consuming to put up those webs.
Yeah.
And
your second joke.
Right, for a second of me running through them. And so then, when you're doing it again and again, people start to question, like, is this worth the time? But I think it was.
Yeah. The practical effects in this was outstanding. I mean, I've watched higher budget films and just like, what is happening? Why is it so bad?
Right.
And then the demon in the box, you got the giant demon outside, and then you had the disgruntled Bob's Big Boy type. I mean, you feel like you had to be really knowledgeable of the 80s and 90s to get every single thing that was happening, because at least I grew up during that time, so it just brought back so many nostalgic memories. And I love how you incorporate it into this film, because the 80s never died, the 90s never died, and I think you had to be very witty and understanding of dialogue and the characters and able to incorporate that, because the meatloaf oh my gosh,
that's kind of the pinnacle of
Olivia in the chip. What's her name?
Gadget.
Yeah, was that you too? Because you switched back and forth, but I was like, is that still her? That was amazing makeup. We need a movie. We need a live action.
Oh man,
I don't know that we could afford.
Be pitching that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, but step one would be to convince you to do that makeup again.
I realized that, it was a brutal day. The day we shot the Meatloaf music video, we shot the whole music video in one day, which, it's only a few minutes, but it's really time consuming to shoot a music video because there's so many setups. And I went between Gadget in the morning, which was like 4 hours of makeup, doing all the Gadget stuff, and then have to get switched back to Farah, which then takes a couple hours to get it all off. And then, we're shooting overnight. So it was a really long day, but so well worth it. I mean, Andrew, if anything, he's an expert in like 80s and 90s references and TV shows and films and character. It's literally pulsing through his veins at all times. So I don't think it's hard for him to write that stuff in. That's easy for him.
It's what's hard is to try. Well, what's hard is to limit it, because I had so many jokes that I'm like, this is a joke for no one. There was a joke about, I spent 30 minutes one night. I wanted him to reference the sitcom Perfect Strangers. And actually, this is a scene that was cut before they break into Bartok's study. there was a scene where they're walking down the hall and Onyx is telling Mr. Duke and Mac, you know, like, I don't want to do this. What if we get caught? What if they punish us? What if they kick us out? Blah, 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 blah. And for some reason, I thought he should reference Perfect Strangers in that moment. And so I was looking for an episode of Perfect Strangers that would have maybe like a plot device that I could quote into that context. And I sat here for so long watching episodes of Perfect Strangers, looking up summaries for Perfect Strangers. And then I was like, how about this? Just don't make the Perfect Strangers joke. You've got enough in there. And also, hopefully, they're there for people that get the reference. But also, I think it almost doesn't matter what Onyx is saying. It sounds funny enough for him to scream about Radio Flyer, even if somebody doesn't know what the movie Radio Flyer is.
I got it though.
Yeah,
I remember Radio Flyer. I remember Perfect Strangers.
Yeah,
so if you would have had that joke in there, I would have gotten it. I was like, oh, okay.
I was talking with the director Joe Lynch recently, and he said, I really loved the Onyx movie. I just wanted to thank you though for one specific joke about Radio Flyer. He said that like every time he brings up that movie, nobody knows what he's talking about, so he felt very seen that I had included a Radio Flyer joke. In the
that was actually while we filmed that, because you were improvising those lines.
That's right. Those were improv. Yeah.
Those were improv. A few, but when you said Radio Flyer, the entire crew, I heard everyone was like, everyone was trying to laugh. It was, it was a deep cut.
It is a deep cut.
When you had said, there was something you said, it was a bobcat that comes to life and kicks off. And I was thinking of He-Man, because I don't know why that popped in my head.
Totally.
It just like right on it to the set. And I was like,
yeah.
Is it a reference to He-Man?
It is. Totally. I mean,
what?
You can almost link every joke to, even if it isn't a direct reference, it's like, that's why that visual's in my head, without a doubt. That's why that visual's in Onyx's head. And obviously the Battle Cats toys are kind of a mix of Thundercats and Battle Beasts, the toys, and definitely Beefy Bad Boy is Bob's Big Boy for sure. That's where that came from. I grew up like there was a Bob's Big Boy in my suburb, in my town, and we would go all the time. But then it's also kind of Garbage Pail Kids. If it isn't a direct reference, it's definitely a starting off point for ideation, and it all kind of comes from that era, without a doubt.
I wanted to real quick talk about the ghouls. Oh my god!
Yeah.
When the one thing I laughed, I even put a little funny face, like I don't know, there you go, my little ghoul, because I just chuckled the entire time. So when Mr. Duke or Dr. Duke was like Bartok went in there. We all know what happened. And then Onyx and Maze went in there to talk to him about what was going on. And he and I was like, something's not right because the way he was acting. And then as soon as Onyx was like this facial expression, I was like, what is he seeing? And then it's like, do you see the other ghouls? You know what they look like. So in my mind, that's how he's going to look. But when he was like, and I must have, oh my God, laughed so hard. And then it hopped at him.
Yeah.
What the?
And that's a joke that comes from the creature designer, because I didn't say, oh, I think Mr. Duke's ghoul should be the most outlandish. And I think by the time he designed the Duke ghoul, he just realized like, well, what's something we haven't done, or what's something I haven't seen? And also, it would be, almost like embarrassing for Mr. Duke to be in such a state, because he's such a collected, put together man. And so for him to then look the silliest in ways is fitting. And I didn't realize in the moment that it would get a laugh, but it does. That reveal, people really like it. And then we made sure we dialed in a little whoosh as he jumps forward. It's like one of the last things we did.
I still think about that and just like chuckled. Like, because I watched it again yesterday and I was just like, I know it's coming, and I still laugh.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was a reshoot because we didn't like the way, either I was unhappy or Adam was unhappy with the way we shot that puppet at first. So we went back the next.
We ever reshot the next day.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
I think it was one of the first times we worked with the puppets, like had the ghouls out and up and working. And so I think there was a little learning curve for just everybody.
There
But
was.
it's
Those
so
were
great.
those were the hardest to puppeteer and the hardest to film because it involved a number of people and they have a lot of movement. You know, the 9-foot tall demon is actually very easy. It's just one person in there. But the ghouls, yeah, it's pretty much a statue with just, you know, a movable neck and head. But the ghouls took some time to get right.
But I wasn't expecting the ghouls to look like that at all from the first one when she got stabbed, and I was like, okay, it's gonna be a ghoul or dead, and then you see it like, wait, now I see where this is going. I already love this art. The makeup, the practical effects was just amazing. Olivia, you were amazing as Farah. I kept watching the eyes. Was one of them a contact, or do we want to keep that a secret? Because as I was looking, I was like, no, I don't think that's a contact.
No, we don't need to keep it a secret. You can explain my idea.
It was both. Andrew knows me very well, but I don't like contacts. I've always had a hard time on set with contacts fitting correctly, and it's always gone south. So when he wrote that she had 2 colored eyes, I was like, I don't want to wear the contact because it will just cause problems. And we ended up agreeing to do it. I got a really good one that fit. And then halfway through the shoot, it just stops being comfortable. And so we took it out, and I was like, nobody will even notice. Nobody will notice. Then we get into post, and it's like, okay, now we have to actually like digitally give me a green eye in a few of these scenes. But I think it worked out because in the scenes that we did, we ended up wanting to enhance the contact even in a lot of them and really amping it up, the green. So it was a good move. I'm really happy with it in a lot of scenes, but sometimes it's not there. No.
And the logic behind it, which I think is lost on everyone because I don't think I made this clear, and it's partially because we just didn't attack it on the day. But the idea is that Bartok dug out one of his own eyes back in the day to raise Farah, and you see it in illustrated flashes when Farah is talking to Onyx about what will happen if Bartok completes the final ritual. And the idea is that he has 2 green eyes, and now he's missing one, and so she has one of his green eyes. And then it's kind of amplified whenever she's doing magic, and anything that's green in the movie kind of relates to Farah's magic. But I don't think anybody clocks that Bartok had a green eye. I don't think anybody clocks what's happening in those illustrated flashes. It's all so quick. It's one of my failed attempts to dial something in that didn't quite make it.
Well, it didn't ruin anything.
Right. That's just a mulligan for me. Yeah.
I think people pick up on that stuff subconsciously. Like it just adds to the richness of the storytelling.
Yes. Yeah. I'll go with that.
You did it. You did it.
Lastly, I just like real quick. There's 2 last. One is real quick. The entire set design matches to the wittiness and the dialogue and the characters. So it wasn't like, Onyx was saying these references and then, they were just placed there.
Yeah. And that I before I forget, I should call out, because you've talked about the makeup too. That was Eric Zapata, who was a great makeup artist. And then our production designer is Teresa Strebler, and that is all her. I mean, that I definitely said I want a lot of that stuff. I want it to feel rich and lived in, but she went above and beyond. And would there be things on the set that, like you talked about, that first shot of Onyx? Yeah, he's kind of framed by all of these things, a stack of games and Battle Cats trading cards and an old mini DV camera. Already there's kind of context in his world. And she continued that through the mansion and even back out in LA at the meat hut. That's just, she has a real talent for making things feel lived in. I picked up a book at one point that was just going to be closed on Onyx's dresser. And I flipped through it and someone had drawn Battle Cats cartoons. So she'd even sat there. It's like everything was really was touched. And that was because of her attention to detail.
The whole movie turning out as well as it did is because we got so lucky to work with some genius artists. I mean, Dan, our DP, was incredible, and Teresa, just every department was just, we got so lucky because there was no room error or changes or anything. It was, yeah. I hope we just get to work with Teresa forever.
I know. And they all wanted to, like, they got it. And I remember the first day during that dining room scene, I really wanted a big turkey leg for the sake of the joke. It's also just what you picture if you're having a big feast, but definitely in a cartoon logic sense, there'd be a big turkey leg for Onyx to tear into. And they were having a hard time getting it. And our prop master, whose name was Jeffrey, was like, I couldn't find a turkey leg. Are we okay without it? And I was like, think we need that turkey leg. And he was like, no, you're right. You're right. And he found it. He wanted to get it there. He wanted to get every detail right. And we were lucky that every department had wanted that.
And lastly, I wanted to say is that what makes Onyx so unique is that even though he's a grown man, it has that childlike innocence that we all have with us, that sometimes you don't want it to let go. But I mean, you have to at a certain point, but I think we all still carry it. And, like from the things that we have, like all this display and some toys, and you collect dolls, and we all have that. And that lunchbox, because I had a lunchbox like that when I was a kid. I mean, it just brought back, we all have a child innocence in us, and it doesn't mean it have to go away. And sometimes it could save an entire world from demons. So I really do appreciate the character, the story, the film brought back great memories. Thank you so much, both of you, to come on here to talk about this, because I could probably talk about this another 2 or 3 hours. There were so many things, like, oh man, I remember that. I heard that. I know where that's from. Because I grew up with that. I grew up with those toys and things. So I just want to cry because
well, I appreciate it, and I'm glad. It means a lot that that's what you took from it, because that is the heart of the film, and that is the heart of the character, which is that he has an innocence and an earnestness that shouldn't be neglected, and actually might be his strongest trait. And he has that curiosity of, secret passageways. Are you kidding me? I mean, he's down for the adventure, and he wants to believe in people, and he wants to have people believe in him. And so I'm glad that was what you took from it, because that was our intention for sure.
Please check it out, and you will have I swear you would have a good time. You would laugh, you would catch on to the reference, the makeup, the makeup effects, the practical effects is outstanding. Some of the best work I've ever seen. And this is not even like a gazillion-dollar budget.
Right.
You could teach attention to detail. And that was so important, from the dialogue, from the characters to the makeup. You can definitely see that. And I appreciate that. And your fans appreciate that as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having us on. Glad you enjoyed it so much.
I really did. And out there, everybody, like I said, you better watch it. But if you like more videos like this, make sure you like, subscribe, and don't forget to leave a comment. Look for everything Olivia's in. She is fabulous just as well. So thank you so much. Until next time, everyone. Bye.